always wonderful on a rainy day to come out here and look at the plants. And it's been raining now for the last 2 days, and everything got a good drench of water, which is what the garden really needed. And I'm so glad that we had that for the garden. And it's really, you know, the way the rain interacts with the plants, what it does for the plants is nothing. It's like you can water as much as you water, but the way the rain makes the plants happy and grow, it's just phenomenal. And I love it when it rains. And I just wanted to today actually walk you through my shade garden and show you some of the new additions this year in the shade garden. I didn't really make videos when I was adding these plants to the garden, because I think there are lots of videos out there on how to plant, what technique do you use to plant. So I really feel like I have posted videos like that in the past, and I didn't want to kind of make a video every time I was planting out here, because somehow I find, when I'm planting, I get in the zone and I'm going through this process of thinking and adding and bringing home something that I found or someone gave me, and it's such a joy to kind of keep adding to the garden. So where I can, I will try to take you along, but for most part the process is pretty much the same. You have to assess your soil, you have to make sure you're planting the right plant in the right place, and making sure it has what it needs to thrive. And sometimes, and not always this is true, because a lot of times we can push ourselves to try plants in different places. So I have pushed myself to try lots of sun-loving plants in less shade, dry shade. And it's an experiment, and sometimes things work and sometimes they don't work. And I encourage you to try in your garden with some things each year to see what can be pushed. A lot of sun-loving plants can grow in somewhat of part shade or shadier conditions. It's just that you have to come to terms that they're not going to perform as well as they were growing in a more ideal situation and conditions. They might get leggier, they may not bloom as prolifically, but they will still be okay if you give them, if their needs are met. So let's walk around, and I'm going to show you some of the new plant additions in the shady border. Honestly, like, this area here has been challenging. I have maple trees, as you can see, really huge. I think 40 feet maple trees. They are enormous, and I suffer with a lot of dry shade, root competition, and I have managed to grow a few things in my shade garden, and I think it will inspire you. A lot of people have questions about what can I grow in the shade. I have these trees, I have dry shade, and I just hope this video inspires you to grow and try a few things in your garden. And I will say that this garden is still a work in progress. Things are evolving in here. It's a fairly new garden. It hasn't really matured, so sometimes things will not be as they appear. They might peter out after a few years. So I'm still experimenting. So I would encourage you to experiment on your own. And a lot of times the plants that I add in this area are things that I have found on clearance, or someone has given them to me, because I know how rough these conditions are, and I try to save as much money as I can when I am planting in this area, because I know it's challenging. I know it can take a few tries before I can get something to establish and do well. So with that, let's walk around, and I'll introduce you to some of the new introductions in this garden. And my most favorite introduction is Ali. He's my beautiful Labradoodle, sweetheart, and I love having him in the garden. He's often out here with me, and we are so happy together in the garden, and he's my favorite companion. And so let's see, he's ready to give you this tour, so I'm ready as well. So as I entered the shade garden, I have this border on both sides, and I love how this is filling in and coming together. So on this side here, I have geranium. This is just the big root geranium that I have in my garden. It was part of this house, and I moved it around in my garden a lot to fill empty spots, and it does wonderfully in the shade. It is done blooming now, though it only blooms once. This one in the spring, it has these really nice pink blooms, and it's done. And for the rest of the season, it has this beautiful foliage. So I also have some iris planted here, so it's at the edge of the shade border, so it does get enough light, although it's a new iris, so it hasn't really bloomed for me this year, but that's okay. It was an iris that a friend of mine gave to me, so it's doing okay here. It's looking good. Even if it doesn't bloom, I'm happy with the way the foliage adds texture in this area. And I also have some ajuga here. I think this is royal burgundy or something like that ajuga. It is doing okay. It was suffering a bit when we had that intense drought and heat, but I think with all this rain now, it's flushing back and it's looking good. And over there I have some crocosmia. So this is again an experiment that I tried. I got some bare root crocosmia corms, and I have added them in this spot just to see what they were gonna do. They did not bloom last year. This year they've come back, and I see lots of leaves, so I'm hopeful that they may bloom. And even if they didn't bloom here, I don't mind the grassy texture it's adding to this spot. So that's again an experiment that, you know, we'll see how this does and what it's going to do in the garden. So over here, what I have done is I've added some astilbes here this year as well, and they are looking good. I've had trouble growing astilbes in this garden, obviously because of the dry shade. It is super dry in here, and I can't get them to thrive in my garden, but I'm going to try them in this section here, which is not as dry, doesn't have as much root competition, and keep an eye on them and give them the water that they need. And I purposefully planted them with these endless summer hydrangeas because I know these are high maintenance, they need a lot of water, so it just will motivate me to also water the astilbes alongside with these plants as well. And I also have I think this one is called Ligularia. This is a proven winner, Ligularia. So this is also a high water need plant. So another tip I have is to group plants that have similar water needs together, so that when you are watering, you are kind of, you know, killing a lot of birds with one stone, kind of a saying. So it just helps you get a little bit more organized and with the watering. So yeah, so these are beautiful astilbes that are planted. I have 4 or 5 plants peppered in here with the hydrangeas, and they are looking great. They are so far doing absolutely well in this spot and looking really wonderful. So let's walk ahead and show you what's on the other side. This is me entering my shade garden. Let's walk over and show you some of the plants on this side. On this side, I do have an Itea. I think this is I can't remember the name of this Itea. I think it's Little Henry or something along those lines, and it is blooming. So this is kind of loving this spot a little bit, which I'm happy that I actually accidentally broke off a stem at the base, but I can see new growth coming in, and it has these beautiful bottle brush like blooms, which are looking really, really pretty in the shade garden. And I also have some more of that geranium in there. Actually, I have to bring some more of this from my front garden because it always grows so much over there, and I can bring and kind of move and fill in some of these gaps. As you can see, I've also transplanted a couple of astilbes here, hoping that they're gonna like this spot better than where they were. So this is a new addition, a new hosta that I added in my garden. One is called August Moon. It has a nice corrugated kind of leaf on it, and it has a nice limey green color, which I like because, as you can see, as I'm entering the shade garden, it really illuminates the color of the shade garden because it's pretty shady in here. And then I also have a euonymus that I added in the back here. I think this is the gold I think it's more of a chartreuse and gold euonymus. It has a very interesting double colored leaf. I don't think you can really see it in this spot, but I wanted to add some evergreen interest in this spot because everything here dies back. So it's nice to have some color to look at throughout the winter. So this is just going to sprawl and fill in that gap, and it might even climb up a little bit on the fence, but that's going to take a while for it to kind of do that. So this hosta here will get about 3 feet wide and about a couple of feet tall, and it will have beautiful blooms soon. I hope it blooms this year. So again, beside it, I have some heuchras. So these are the obsidian heuchras. So these ones are really, really beautiful, dark, intense foliage. As you can see, the new foliage is a little bit lighter, and it is really nice and dramatic to add a different color in the shade garden beside all the green. And this is actually doing really well in this spot, and it's liking this spot. So I love having this here. And I do have some Branera in the back here. So this is the non-variegated version. It just has plain green leaves, and I like the bold texture it's offering in this spot, and they are really filling in this year. These were planted last season, so they are filling in, and they did bloom in the spring, so I'm hoping next year they're a little bit bigger. Here is a Japanese maple that I planted here. I really do not know the variety name. It was one that I picked up at Home Depot, and it came at the beginning of the season, and it was, you know, well priced, and I just picked it up, and honestly they had no tags on it. So like the light green color, and I'm excited to see what this does as in the fall, what color it's going to change, and that's the exciting part. But for now it is kind of white. It has slight white variegation, so it might be moon shadow or something like that, but I'm not really sure. So that's why I don't want to name it and tell you that it could be this. I really don't know. So here I have some Pachysandra under this hosta here. I think this hosta is or might be an Empress View. I'm not really sure, but it is doing well. I do have a little meadowsweet shrub here. This is a native shrub. It was planted a couple of years ago. It struggles a lot because it doesn't get moisture. So this year it's not doing badly, so it's growing. So I'm gonna let it do its thing and see how, you know, if it struggles past a couple of years, it might survive and do its thing. So we'll see what it does. And that's why, you know, I like planting a lot of natives in this section. I'm actually experimenting with a lot of native plants in this section. I picked up a whole bunch of free native shrubs from my local foundation here, and I have planted them in this spot. So those are the new adds here. So this is a gray twig dogwood that I picked up, that I added here. It can do well in part shade, so I put it here just to see if this was robust enough to kind of provide that, you know, tall layer in here. So this will kind of grow up and give me some privacy and fence coverage. And it is a beautiful native dogwood. It gets about 10 feet tall and wide. You can size control it. I mean, you could trim what you don't need, and it loves to, it's really good for the birds and the pollinators. It has these beautiful white dogwood blooms, you know, the typical dogwood blooms, those flat disc-like blooms, and it then produces these beautiful white berries that the birds love. And I like the idea of having white berries in the shade because they will pop. So again, this is a fairly new shrub. It was just planted, and it's doing well. It's adapting. It's getting lots of moisture, and I love it. So here I have some more hostas. This one is more chartreuse and green. This one has more green with like a yellow margin to it. I don't know the names of these hostas, but they are really old. They've been in my garden, and they were moved here, and they're doing well here. So I also have an oak leaf hydrangea here. I believe this is Snow Queen or Snow Queen, and it is really, really tiny at the moment. I moved it in this spot because I think it's going to do well here because a very adaptable plant for the shade, and I love the, you know, the texture it's adding to this spot. So I'm hoping it grows and it fills in here. And then I have a drift of these beautiful pumpkin spice heucherellas in front. So this here was a new addition this year. This spot had my astilbes. It was not thriving, it was dry, and it just didn't work for the astilbes. But these are doing well here. I just planted them a few weeks ago, and they have these beautiful you know, colors of like almost like a fall-like color. I like how they kind of illuminate this spot here, and they are a blend between heucheras and tiarellas. So they are pretty, they have like the best of both, and I think they're going to be robust enough for this spot. And I love how they pick up on the bronzy color of the autumn fern. So I have 2 autumn ferns planted in the back here. So again, I don't do well with ferns in this spot because of the moisture conditions, but these autumn ferns have come back really nicely for me, and I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that they will thrive in this spot. I love ferns, and I really want them to work in the garden. So I'm happy that they're doing well. So again, I have more hostas here. I have a white bleeding heart here. This is done blooming, but it also adds a nice bluish green foliage. It has a more like a delicate foliage, which I really like in the garden, especially in contrast with all of these bold kind of foliage of this hosta. But this hosta here is a proven winners hosta. This is the Shadowland Woo Lala. So I love this hosta, and the reason why I haven't left a lot of space between my hosta is because another thing about this spot is that the hostas are not going to get to the size that they would normally get, like, you know, 4-5 feet wide or something. And if they do, I'll be very happy. But you know, they are going to grow slower than normal. But I just want to show you how big this leaf is. It is ginormous compared to my hand. So it is just a beautiful hosta. Actually, this one is doing really well, and it's happy in this spot. So I love that. And then I have a drift of this is not Queen of Hearts. This is the Jack Frost Brunnera. So I have 3 of them here, and they are so beautiful here, and they just add this really nice white kind of light in this shade garden area. And this is my mouse ears hosta. So this was a new addition this year. I thought this was really cute. It's a small tiny hosta, and it's blooming, so it's really cute. And I added it at the edge of the border so I can always see it because it's so tiny. And here is a little clump of the Hakana cloa grass. This is the variegated one, and I think it's called Aurora or something like that. And it is come back and it's thriving. So I'm hoping that it's going to like this spot. So far so good. We'll see how this does. It is growing pretty slowly, but it's come back and it's doing well. So more hostas here, and I have lots of hellebores here that bloomed earlier, and they are getting established, so I'm really happy about that. I did plant 3 foxgloves in here. So these are those apricot foxgloves I planted in here. So I think they are going to bloom next year. They are just a set of leaves. So they are biennials. They are going to bloom next year, I'm sure. And they will look good. And then this here is a native 9 bark. So I planted a native 9 bark here. Again, this was part of the free shrubs that I got. So this is the native 9 bark. It gets about 9 feet tall, and it can get pretty wide, but I do have a nice opening here where it can be left to grow and look good. So if it establishes itself, I'll be very happy. So again, this is an experiment. It can take part shade and variety of soil conditions. So I'm really excited about this one. And I have another one that I planted here as well. So I got 2 of these shrubs free, and these are doing well so far. So I'm happy to have them in my garden. And I also got a couple of serviceberry shrubs that I planted towards the back of this border, and I'm hoping that they will take and do well. Again, this is part of me experimenting with a bunch of native shrubs for the shade garden to see how they're going to perform. And here, over there, let me just walk over and show you. So here is another one of those euonymus. Actually, this one I left the tag on so I could share it with you. So let me give you the name. So this is the gold tip euonymus, and it has, you know, really a nice color on it. So I'm hoping that eventually it's going to go up this trellis here, and it can creep up a little bit too. So we'll see how this one does. So this is another shrub that I planted. This is the native native elderberry. So again, I'm pushing it in this shady spot. We'll see how this does. So far it's looking good and doing well, so I'm hoping it continues. And I also planted another of those native gray dogwoods in this corner here. I did have a variegated dogwood in this space here, which did not come back. It died right to the ground. I think it was too dry for it, but this one I think is settling just okay, because I see new leaves coming, and I hope this will be happy in this spot. So I'm just trying to add a shrub layer to this to the shade garden, just to give it more interest and more appeal. Here is another native service I keep calling it service berry. This is the elderberry. So this one here is blooming. I love the dainty flowers on the elderberry, and gorgeous. I'm hoping it likes this spot as well, and it can kind of fill in. So here is another view of the shade garden from behind, and it is looking really full, and I'm really happy with how it's turning out. And this is another native shrub. This is fragrant sumac. Love the leaves on it. It has a nice fall color as well, so I'm excited to add it here. And then what I also added was some evergreen interest. So I found these beautiful pinpoint fall cypress on clearance. They were like $10 each, and I added a few in my garden just because I wanted to add evergreen interest. I didn't want to plant them in the ground because I wanted to see if it was going to be happy in this spot. And I had these large containers. They were just sitting with nothing in it. So I thought I would grow them in a container and see how they were going to do for me. And so far it looks like it's happy in this spot. So this one is the blue and gold pinpoint fall cypress. It's by Proven Winners. It's going to get about, it's hardy in zones 5 to 7. It's going to get about 15 to 20 feet tall and 4 to 5 feet wide. So it's this, you know, narrow evergreen, which I think will look really good if I was to plant it in this spot. But you know, I might eventually plant it. I might just enjoy it in this container. I like the height it's adding, the container, and I love how it has these beautiful healthy leaves. It has these little kind of florets, I think, and they are so pretty. It has a nice tinge of yellow and also blue with it, so which is what I'm loving about this one. Absolutely gorgeous. The other plant that I added in this section is this beautiful Katsura Pieris japonica. So this is again an evergreen, and it will bloom these beautiful pink flowers in the spring, which I hope it does next year. It might take a few years before it blooms, but what's interesting about it is the foliage. It's gorgeous when new foliage emerges as this bright red, which is actually looking really, really pretty in the garden, as you can see. So it's looking gorgeous, and I love how it looks with this beautiful I think it's, this flower here is catchfly. So this is the variegated catchfly. It's called Clifford Muir. It's been blooming since spring, and it still has a lot of blooms. So it is kind of performing in my garden like a perennial geranium, and I love how this is looking. It adds so much vibrancy and you know, just fills in the spot really well, and it's looking really gorgeous in the garden. So I would highly recommend this plant. This was something I just bought on a whim. I wasn't even sure what this was, and as soon as I planted it in the shade garden, it just took off and it loved it here. The only thing I saw it wilt a little bit was when it was really dry. So as soon as I watered it, it was fine. So yeah, it's really pretty. I do have a Japanese painted fern in there. It was struggling a lot, but now with all this moisture, it's looking happy. So fingers crossed it's gonna do well. I do have a rhododendron in here. This is Nova Zembla. It struggled a lot in the spring, but it's since doing okay. It's starting to put out some new growth and new foliage. I'm hoping it's happy in this spot. I do have another obsidian heuchera here, and it's also looking really nice. It adds a little bit of color in this section here as well. So this is this side of the shade garden, and I have a lot more to show you in the middle there. But before I go there, this is kind of like a little island before I hit that other part. This is kind of my seating area. I sit here a lot and enjoy this garden. And in here I have two incredible hydrangeas that are budded up, and they will bloom soon and add a lot of interest in this section. I do have some Virginia, also known as pipsqueak, in here. I do have a ruby spice clethra, which is leafing and happy, and I'm so happy that it's finally in a good spot where it will potentially do good. So I'm hoping it blooms, and I'm hoping it's happy here. Again, this is a beautiful sweet smelling shrub which will look great. I have two hostas here with chartreuse kind of variegation or lime green variegation, and they look really nice. They really add to this little corner here. And the new additions in this garden are these beautiful astilbes by Proven Winner. So these are the dark side of the moon astilbes. I added two of them, one here and one here, and I love how they pick up on this black mondo grass. And I do have a pumpkin spice heucherella here tucked in here as well, just one, and it kind of gives enough to highlight the spot, which I love. So dark side of the moon astilbe is a new addition. I love the foliage, so dark and rich, and it's going to have these beautiful raspberry lavender blooms. So when it blooms, I'll show you what this looks like, but really happy with this one. So this is the black stockings thalictrum that I added. It's done blooming. It's doing well in this spot, and it's happy. So here is another view of this section here. So let's talk about this area here. So this area here is really looking good. So this is a new hosta I added. This one is called Blue Hawaii. Again, it's a beautiful blue-leaved hosta. It's blooming, has pretty blooms. Actually, I'm the kind of person who loves hosta blooms. I love it when they bloom. Some people I know don't like the hosta blooms, but I love them. I will take whatever they give me, and I'll just love it. And I have a beautiful grass here. This is the overdam, kind of like a Carl Forrester variation called overdam. It has this beautiful variegated foliage, and it's blooming, and it's looking really pretty with all the ajuga and I have a couple of geranium tiny monsters here, so they are doing okay. And then here is epimediums that I planted earlier in the spring. So these are the orange, I think they're called, let me see, they are called Orange Queen, yes. So these will have beautiful orange flowers in the spring next year, so I'm looking forward to it. So they will be like more of a ground cover and cover this spot. I planted a Queen of Hearts Brunnera here. It has beautiful more of a white foliage, and it's gorgeous. I love it. So this one is in this section. I have couple of yellow twig dogwoods, one on this side and one on the other side. I'll show you in a minute. And what I also planted was a beautiful Gatsby Girl pink oak leaf hydrangea in this spot. I'm hoping it's going to like this spot. I'm loving it in this spot. I love how it adds this opulence and right in the middle of this bed, and I love the beautiful, beautiful blooms on it. So this is the nursery blooms, right? These are not the blooms from my garden. So the real test will be when it comes back next year and how it blooms. So I never take what the plants are doing in the first year as a measure of success in my garden. It's more when they come back next year and how they perform would be the measure for me. So that's where that's at. That's an elegance hosta. That's a sum and substance hosta. I think they're happy there. And I do also have another oak leaf hydrangea here. It's doing well. It's leafed out. This was planted last fall and it's happy. So I'm assuming the other one is going to be happy, although I don't see any blooms on this. So we'll see how they do. This is my willow that I planted here. This is the tree of enchantment willow, the droopy willow. I planted it in the spot and I plan to leave it in here for the winter to see how it does. So let's walk over. You know what, let's walk around and then I'll come back and I'll show you what's on the other side. So as I walk through here, I do have a lot more hostas. As you can see, there is a June hosta there. There is the Shadowland Boolala hosta in the middle, about to bloom. So they are still pretty tiny. They haven't really put on a lot of new growth, but they've come back and they are doing good in that spot, which makes me happy. So this here is another yellow twig dogwood. This is a dwarf burning bush. I have it in this shady spot. It is doing okay, and we'll see how it does. And then this here is another autumn fern, and it's doing good. This one is very slow to kind of leaf out, so I'm not really sure how this one is going to do, but I'm giving it some time. And here is the Japanese forest grass. This is the all gold. I have two of them. This one looks better than this one here. Not sure why, but they are doing okay. And then I have beautiful, beautiful Solomon seal. So this is the first plant that I planted actually in this beautiful shade garden. Someone gave this to me and I have it all around this garden. It adds a beautiful architectural interest to the shade garden and I absolutely love it. So here is some autumn joy sedum. This blooms here as well. Again, this is stretching a plant where it shouldn't be, but it is, and it's doing okay. So I might add more sedums to the shade garden to see how they do. At least at the edges they do okay. So here is another look at the Solomon seal. It is a fantastic plant for the shade. It hasn't spread as much for me especially because of the root competition. So I'm okay. It stays in the spot and it comes back every year and it's doing well. And I have another clump there that comes back. And here is another ligularia. This is just a fern that I have in this pot here. Just an annual fern. I think it's just one that you find at the grocery store. I have some lamium here that is kind of in the spot, not really moving too much. Another fragrant sumac planted here. I have a caramel hukra here, which is doing okay. I actually planted some wild ginger in there. I found a bit of it. It's getting chewed by something, but I'm excited to have this plant in my garden. It's a low growing ground cover and it should kind of spread and do its thing here. I'm excited to have this one. And then I have another Queen of Hearts Branera here. I have some sweet spires here as well. And one of them is blooming finally. These was really struggling last year. So I'm excited that they are settling in here. And this is some new hostas in the garden. This one is called Dreamweaver. I love the leaves on this. They are blue with a beautiful margin in the middle. And this hosta here is called Designer Jeans. So this one has beautiful red stems and nice yellow, bright yellow leaves as it emerges, and then it ages to a chartreuse, which is also pretty. So lovely hosta. It's a new addition in my garden. And this hosta here is called humpback whale, and it is also a nice huge giant hosta. I don't think it's going to get too giant like here, but it's nice. It adds this bold presence in the shade garden. And lots more hostas here. I also have a beautiful Eye of Tiger sumac here, which is also something I pushed on its limits, and it's doing really well in this spot. Actually, it's really doing well this year. So I'm loving the texture of the sumac here. I did also push some of the salvia here as well, and it bloomed and it did well. It just got a little leggy. It just moves more towards the light, but I'm okay with that. And I also have some little goldstrum rudbeckias in here, which are about to bloom in the shade. Pretty part shade, which is lovely to see. And then I have some mugo pines here. I have a couple of mugo pines in here. They are doing okay as well. And here is another container of the blue and gold pinpoint false cypress. It's also looking good. I added this container as I make a turn towards this side because I like how it's adding this evergreen interest here. Love it in the container, and I think I will keep it in the container for the winter. And then over here I have some sedums. I have some Japanese forest grass, which is just about starting to pick up a little bit. It was looking very dead. And then I have columbine here, which is done blooming. I'm just letting it self-seed. I have some geranium that's blooming here. It's gorgeous as well. And then I also have Carl Forester featherweed grass, which is blooming, and it's looking great in the shade. It's doing okay so far for me, so I'm gonna take what I get. It didn't get as tall as it should, but it still is blooming and it's still green, and I love how it's looking and adding a little bit of texture to the shade garden. So that's it. This is my shade garden. I may have missed a few plants here and there. If you saw something in the video that I didn't talk about, do let me know in comments below. But this is my beautiful shade garden, and I wanted to spend some time today to show you all the plants in here, some of the new things that I've added, and it's been a joy to kind of spend time and work on this challenging area. It's given me a lot of taught me a lot of patience, experience. Just working with this garden has been really wonderful, and it really offers a different dynamic in the garden, which I am so lucky to enjoy because I do have some. So I lost power towards the end of that video, but I wanted to thank you all for watching this video, coming along with me today. We explored my shade garden. It's been a labor of love. It's been joyful to kind of try these different plants there, and it's also been trying. Like, I would say I was quite intimidated by this garden when I first started. It was big, it was overwhelming, and it was all on me to decide how I wanted to work in it and what I wanted to do with it. So it's been fun to kind of come up with a layout, think about the plants that are going to go there, find the plants, get plants from gardening friends, and so much more. It's been great, and I'm so excited this year to try native shrubs and see how they do in my garden. So what new things are you trying in your shade garden? Do let me know in comments below. I'd love to hear from you, and I thank you so very much for watching this video, and I'll catch you very soon in my next video. Have a fabulous day.